the human mind is really capable of creating as the greatest pharmacy in the world. And I think Bruce can speak to that within each and every one of us, we have the ability to be able to literally create the chemistry that we need in order to overcome, things like, heart disease, which Dean Ornish, he's talking about Dean Ornish is reversing heart disease. But I think with things like the flu, things like that, I think I went 25 years or so. I used to lecture about this all the time, and without ever having a cold. And I used to always talk about my brother Jim, who used to say, he'd get a sniffle on Monday. He'd say, well, tomorrow it'll be in my throat, and on Wednesday it'll be in my chest, and on Thursday I'm going to have a fever. I'm going to have to take Friday off, and it would still be Monday, and he'd be taking Friday off in a fever. In fact, I remember asking him one time, how long have you had this cold, and he said, well, in 3 weeks it'll be a month. It's like he's just anticipating that those kind of, and when we shift around and make ourselves feel good and recognize that we have that power and practice these kind of mind-changing things, it doesn't, I don't think Bruce or I are putting down the entire medical profession. If I broke my leg, I'm going to an orthopedic guy.
Absolutely.
And I had a heart attack in 2000, a minor heart attack from a blocked artery, and I went to a cardiologist. They put a stent in there, and and I'm very grateful. It saved my life. I'm still here breathing and talking because of that. But I don't think that there's enough emphasis on the power that each and every one of us have, because we've almost been institutionalized through these mind viruses to believe that we are powerless when it comes to these kinds of things. It's like the big example of this thing just recently was this swine flu thing, where people are going around. We're talking about microscopic things that, you can put 1 billion of them on the head of a pin, and we're going around putting little masks over our face. Like, these things can't get through these masks. They're not going to figure out how to do that. And we create fear and worry and anxiety over virtually everything that we do. It's very, very hard to watch a television show anymore without first being told what pill we need to take for every kind of malady that we possibly could have. And then the news, and the news is sponsored. First of all, the news is so depressing, and then it's sponsored by antidepressants. And when you start thinking about some of the real, things that we ought to be concerned about, that 31% of our children in this country are morbidly obese. Are headed towards being morbidly obese or dramatically overweight, and we've got something like 11 million children taking antidepressants for things that didn't even exist 25 years ago. What are we doing to our society and to our people? We're feeding them, a heavy diet of you are powerless to be able to do things, and that's why when you asked me why I, wanted to find out who Bruce Lipton was and why I wrote about him in his book in the Excuses Be Gone, is because that's the one big excuse that we need to really overlook, get rid of. The one is that it's our biology, and two, it's that it's my environment and what happened to me when I was a little boy or a little girl. None of that stuff stands up anymore. And I don't know what you've done, Bruce, in the way of depression, but depression is a major, major difficulty for our country. There's millions and millions of people taking, drugs for depression. And I just read a book called Train Your Mind, Change Your Brain by Sharon Begley, and they were talking about how they can take people who have chronic, classic depression and train them to change their thought at that moment, and they take an MRI before and after, and they have a different brain than they did the moment before. Is that right? I just hear people saying over and over again, they start out by saying it's going to be difficult for me to change. I've been addicted to this. I've been overweight for this many years. I've and it's going to take me a long time, and I'm scared and all of that. And as you begin to examine these programs that you have that have been handed to you by these invisible mind viruses that have duplicated and replicated and spread until you carry them around with you and you start to believe them, as soon as you start to just decide that you're going to examine them, you can go into that subconscious mind. That's why I don't use the term subconscious mind as much as I use the term habitual mind. It's just these are just habits, because once you realize they're habits and they're choices that you made, even when you were 3 years, when patients used to say to me, well, who's responsible for why you think this way? And they'd say, well, it's usually my mother. My mother's take a big rap on all of this. And I'd say, okay, so your mother's responsible. What I want you to do is leave my office and go get your mother. And I want you to bring her here. and I'm going to treat her, and then you're going to get better. And they would say, you could see the absurdity of that. But the fact is that even if you were 3 years old, and I will say to them, well, did you know any 3-year-olds, like siblings that you had or friends that you had, that had the same kind of efforts at people to program you, and they resisted them? Like, I resisted most of that kind of programming, and I just say that constitutes a choice that I was making even then. But there were many that I didn't. And if the minute that you start blaming somebody else for these programs that exist in you, then you got to wait for them to change. But if you take responsibility for it and said, I didn't know how not to choose it, but it was still a choice that I made. I believed that I couldn't overcome this, that I couldn't become more effective in dating. I couldn't make money. I couldn't overcome my being overweight or whatever. As soon as you say this was my choice, now you have an option of changing around the programming.